The ultimate free pass when it comes to clutter is the just in case clutter. Am I right? Because you can apply that thinking to any item. It is so easy to say, well, I just might need this about literally any slightly remotely useful item in your home. So how do you combat the easiest get out of jail free card when it comes to your clutter? So before we officially tackle your just in case clutter, let's uncover some of the reasons that we hold on to these items. First is scarcity. It feels secure to hold on to something knowing we'll have it if we need it. What if we got rid of it and we couldn't find a replacement? What if you need it later and you don't have the money for it? Or simply if times are tough, or times used to be tough, the idea of getting rid of something of value is just wrong. The second reason we keep just in case items is practicality. The item has value, and you don't have to re-buy something in the future if you end up needing it, because that's just impractical. It's better to hold on to it in case you do need it. And lastly, one that we don't always talk about when it comes to the just in case items is procrastination. Sometimes just the process of having to decide if you actually need something is too much work. You're not mentally ready to make that decision, or you do make the decision, but then you actually have to get rid of it. It's a chore. You gotta sell it or donate it or clean it up to post it on Marketplace, drive it to the Goodwill. It's just extra work, and sometimes we procrastinate that work. But here's the big problem with our just in case stuff, is there's just too much of it because it's just too easy to keep something just in case you might need it. But the truth is, for most of us, the problem isn't that we don't have enough. It's that we have too much, and everything you keep takes your time, your space, and your attention. Now, using your time, your space, and your attention to keep items of value to you, for example, my blender that I use every week, a book that I reference for work a lot, my kids' most used favorite set of magnet tiles they use every single day, the studio lights that I use to film my videos. All of this is a fair trade-off. I'm using my time, space, and attention to keep these things, but in turn, they're providing me weekly or daily value. But just in case items don't really give you the same trade-off. You're still using your time, space, and attention to tend to them, but the likelihood that you're going to get that in return is little. According to the National Association of Productivity and Organizing Professionals, they say that 80% of the stuff we keep, we never use. 80%. This means that most of our just in case stuff is weighing you down without giving you anything in return. And it kind of comes down to trust and control. We keep these things because we worry we might need them in the future, but we just can't know if we will. We're trying to control things that we can't really control, the future, and this makes it really hard when you're looking at something and asking yourself, but what if I need this again? But then again, what if you don't? If you think about it sensibly, if you haven't used it, needed it, thought about it, wanted it, yearned for it recently, you probably don't need it. If you see it and you go, oh my God, I forgot I had this, the odds are pretty likely you could live without it. Listen, if we haven't used it all this time, we don't need it now. And like 95% of the time, we don't. Very rarely have I ever regretted getting rid of something or had to rebuy something because I got rid of it. Sure, it happens. Sometimes you get rid of something and later are like, man, I could use that now. But you still have to ask yourself if the trade-off of keeping it, managing it, and maintaining it would have been worth the value to you. Okay, so I want to give you some questions to ask when you are faced with those just in case pieces. 1, could you make do with something else? Say you got rid of this item and then down the road you needed it. Could you make do with something else? Let's say you're debating donating some red heels, but you just might need them if you get invited to a nice event or a wedding. But if they weren't in your closet, would you have to run out and immediately buy another pair of red heels, or could you make do with the black heels that are in your closet that are more versatile and match more things? Maybe you're going through some serving platters, pieces you use when you host dinners. You're looking through a couple of pieces and you're like, I just might need this slightly larger serving platter. But if you were hosting a big party and you didn't have that big platter, could you make do with what you have, or would you have to run out and buy a bigger platter? Question number 2, is this something I have plans to use in the next 6 months? If you cannot think of a legitimate reason on your calendar to use something in the next 6 months, it could be a clear sign that you're keeping this just in case. For the just in case future, you're trying to control that you can't. Number 3, what's the worst thing that would happen if you didn't have this? Like, what's the worst case scenario that would happen if you happened to need this item? Maybe you have two of something in case one breaks. For example, my mom has a Keurig. She loves it. She uses it every single day. And recently, Amazon Prime Day had the Keurig big sale, like 50% off. And she said to me, should I get it just so I have it when mine eventually dies? What is the worst thing that would happen if she didn't have that just in case Keurig? That the Keurig she has right now would eventually die and she would have to pay full price for it instead of getting it 50% off. But she also wouldn't have to store and maintain two Keurigs for the possibly years it would take until that happened. Question number 4, is this something that you could borrow or rent if you needed it? Because everything is so available to us in this day and age, it's really easy to just buy things when we need them. But sometimes we just need something for like one project. Does it really make sense to own and house this entire item when we really only need it 1 or 2 times? Could you just borrow this item? I have a friend who recently had a baby and I loaned her a bunch of baby stuff like bassinet, baby carrier. She was able to use it while the baby was a newborn and then give it back to me. The other thing that I love about borrowing or renting is sometimes it can clue you in to if it's even worth it for you to consider owning it. So maybe you borrow something and then you use it a ton and it makes your life so much better. It tells you maybe this is something worth buying. Or maybe you use it and it was good for that single event, but you didn't necessarily need it to keep one full time, to be the person who owns it and maintains it. For example, I wanted a hiking carrier for our 1-year-old. We don't hike a ton, but we were going on vacation and I thought I really might like one. However, they're really big and bulky and it would take up a lot of space in my home to store it when it's not in use. And I don't know if that space would be worth the value of using it a couple times a year. So instead we borrowed our friends. They weren't using it for the summer since their child has outgrown it and we got to use it for hikes and now I don't have to store and maintain it. The final question I want you to ask yourself is that if the time arose that you did need this item, would you know where it was or even remember to use it? How often have you been looking for something you swear you own but you cannot find? Have you ever bought something you misplaced? Did you know that Americans collectively spend $2.7 billion replacing items they can't find? In order for this just-in-case item to truly be of value is that when you need to use it, you know where it is, which means you need to commit the time and the energy to storing it in a smart, strategic place and being able to manage the inventory to know where it is when the time arises that you need it. Is it valuable enough for you to do that? At the end of the day, if you just keep everything just in case, you'll basically be keeping all of the things. And not every just in case item you really will need. You gotta learn to be more selective or you'll simply keep everything that's just slightly useful. One final tip I want you to consider is to imagine your space without this item. Just because you have room for something doesn't mean you gotta keep it. What space would get freed up if you let this item go? All right, my friends, that is some of my thoughts on the just-in-case items. How do we end up with them and some ways that we can reason with them when we come to them. I think just-in-case items can be one of the biggest roadblocks to clutter because, like I said, it's a really easy excuse. It's a really easy get out of jail free card because anything that's just got a little bit of value, we can say we might need to keep this just in case. So it's one of those items sometimes you really got to step back and ask yourself some questions about because you don't want to end up with so many items that you have 80% of these items that you are storing and maintaining that don't end up getting used. But that does it for this video. As always, thank you so much for stopping by and watching. I hope you're having a fantastic day. Remember to be kind to yourself and to others, and I will see you all in my next video.